Europeans have always been pedophiles, and not even in secret, not in shame, but in marble statues, church scrolls, oil paintings, and colonial doctrine. They didn't just tolerate it, they canonized it. Greeks wrote philosophy to justify it. Romans built empires around it. The church institutionalized it, and Enlightenment thinkers fantasized it under the guise of natural development. This wasn't deviancy. This was design. They called it pederasty. They called it marriage. They called it civilization. But what it really was a multi-century obsession with controlling, owning, and violating the bodies of the young. They sent priests into the global south, not just to baptize, but to brutalize. They painted cherubs with the same hands that signed boarding school decrees. They named age of consent as if it was some moral breakthrough, when it was a legal shield for empire-wide predation. They built entire missionary schools in Africa, Asia, and the Americas, where children were not educated, but broken, violated, and erased, then blamed the native customs for what they brought. This wasn't corruption. It was continuity. The British royal family, the Catholic Church, the Dutch foster system, the French clergy, the UN peacekeepers, the Epstein circuit, networked and funded through European elites and banks. This wasn't deviance. It was governance. They didn't invent clocks to tell time. They invented them to count how long they could get away with it. Let's contrast. Because no, this wasn't human nature. This was European nature, institutionalized. In many West African societies, like the Akan, Yoruba, and Wolof, childhood was considered sacred, not sexualized. There were spiritual prohibitions on adult proximity to prepubescent children in physical or emotional intimacy. Children were seen as ancestors reborn, not objects of desire. In the Andean world, such as the Quechua and the Aymara, childhood had its own ceremonial timeline. Sexual initiation only occurred after structured rites of passage, with age-graded community witnesses and protections, not private violence. Among the Iroquois, such as the Haudenosaunee, consent was communal, and matrilineal lines monitored relationships closely. There were no monarchical decrees marrying off 12-year-old girls. In fact, European colonizers were horrified by how much sexual autonomy adult women had, and how protected children were. In classical Chinese philosophy, Confucian Ethics regarded improper adult-child conduct as a breach of heaven's mandate. A man who violated youth was not perverse. He was cosmically disordered. In pre-Islamic Arabia, and later, under Islamic law, protections around orphan care, puberty as a legal milestone, and prohibitions on coercion created legal boundaries that, despite modern misuse, stood in contrast to the European tradition of aristocratic child marriage. Let's be crystal clear. Non-European civilizations had rules, had ceremonies, had timelines, had protections. Europe had excuses, and when they couldn't excuse it at home anymore, they exported it abroad. They taught it in colonial schools. They funded it through orphanage pipelines. They smuggled it into anthropology textbooks. They buried it under Latin phrases and white, lice-filled, powdered wigs. So no, the sickness wasn't global. It was systemic, strategic, European. You want to talk about Western values? Start with how they treated children, then burn the rest of the curriculum. Cope.